The following audio recording has been designed for learning purposes only. Do not share, distribute, or provide any type of copies, or this audio lesson will not be made available to you. Good luck with today's lesson.
And like I said, right now the extra credit is at 50 points. It's capped at 50, but I can always go more than 50, depending on what you're doing and turning in. Then I can make it more. But it'll cut off on April 26th. And also that the little white lie paper, I had asked for it on the 3rd of April, but I've extended that to the 26th of April. So if you haven't done a final assignment yet, you have until the 26th of April to do it. I just extended the time. So all assignments are due on the 26th. I should have everything. I'm not going to accept anything after 5 o'clock on the 26th of April. You know, because it tells me what time you submitted it, the date and the time that you submitted it. Okay, so now I got the attendance, and I've got to go into March 1st. Okay, the study guide, for those of you who just came in, the study guide is going to be available on Canvas Sunday by 5 p.m. Okay. It'll be available to you because I don't have it with me today. So it'll be available. We'll have a quiz when you come back next week. Okay, well, I'll lecture and you'll have a quiz. I'll give you the quiz first and then I'll lecture. Okay. So you'll have that. Lecture notes. Here. So Katerina was just asking about if you could use older shows. And that's fine if you want to. Whatever shows that you want to highlight when you're looking at things and jotting down your notes and trying to see how poverty is visible or not visible. But I have some favorite old shows. I like some of the funny shows, like Green Acres. Anybody ever seen Green Acres? No, I know that's a long time. But it's about a man and his wife, and they are wealthy, and the man decides he wants to chuck everything and go live in the country and live a simpler life. Okay, and it shows the funny side of how people do that. Okay, so that one, or the Beverly Hillbillies. Anybody ever see that one? Yeah, that's an old one too, but it's about the group of people, family. They become oil rich, and then they move to a mansion. It's all about how they navigate going from one status to another, or one class to another. So that shows you poor and wealthy, how people navigate going from one class division to another. So some of those things, that you might want to look at or not. I'm sure there are plenty of stuff on cable to look at. Okay. All righty. So these are the learning objectives that you'll see when you look at your book and look at the lecture notes on your own. Okay. So we just go through these. Okay. So when we talk about what is deviance, we'll talk about the violation of norms. We have norms. We talked about that back in chapter 3. And then deviance is relative. What is deviant in this society? Having sex with minors. We all know people like that in the news lately. But in another country, it may not be, it's not even a big deal, because people are, girls in particular, are given in marriage at those under 18. Okay, so deviance is relative, depending on what the society says it is. Okay, how norms make social life possible. If we didn't have norms, ways of doing things, you know, it would be crazy here. People would just be doing what they want to do, although some people do what they want to do. And then sanctions. Okay, so there are consequences for every norm that is transgressed. There are sanctions. Okay. All righty. All right. So in Kenya, the Pokok people place a high emphasis on sexual pleasure. Okay. They expect that both the husband and the wife will reach orgasm. But if the husband doesn't satisfy his wife, he's in trouble and will be punished by his wife and her friends. So the wife is going telling all the business. But how? What if she's telling a lie? Yes.
I don't need to be like overstepping, but we already did this chapter.
We did?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm sorry. You know what? Like I said, things are going too fast, and I'm just going crazy. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so let's see. Hold on. We'll just go to the next chapter, which should be here. I'm sorry about that. I'm ahead of myself. Okay. I'm probably going to have to, let me see. Okay, let's see here. Okay, oh God, I put it in there. Okay, 15. All righty. Thank you. I'm just talking away. And so, and I didn't show you any film connected to it. Okay, so that's what I'll do. We'll talk about politics now, and then I'll show you the film that will support the chapter that we saw last week. Okay, there's no written assignment to the film unless you would like it to be one. If you want to comment on the film for extra credit, you can do that. Okay, but there's no formal written assignment for the film. Okay. Only for Little White Lie. Anything else I show you before we leave here, there's no written assignment unless you just want it to be. But the Little White Lie, there is a written assignment for that one. Okay? All right, so we'll go to the next one. Wow. Okay. All right. These are learning objectives. Okay. Micropolitics and macropolitics. So micro is the smaller thing. You're going to distinguish between micropolitics and macropolitics. Micropolitics are everyday life and power, things that affect you every day. Okay. Macropolitics are larger scale. So that would be something that would happen over the country or internationally. Anything that's happening internationally would affect us nationally, okay? Or anything that affecting us nationally eventually will affect others internationally. So an example would be the economic crisis, the housing crisis, where people were buying all of these junk bonds, and then the housing market collapsed. That had a ripple, that not only affected us, it affected people worldwide. Okay, so that would be an example of macro. All right, so authority, okay, authority, legitimate and legitimate violence, okay. Oh shoot, I knew that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to get you an article on, oh man, I was supposed to get you an article on President Obama during his time in office and how he was ordering drone strikes on American citizens who were overseas. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get, and I'll still get that article to you. Okay, but it's interesting some of the stuff that he was doing during his time in power, but which is something that the country is justified, or his administration justified as in the interest of national security. But still, they were targeting American citizens overseas, using drones to kill them. Okay, so I'll get that to you. I knew it was something I was supposed to do. So you have authority in legitimate violence, okay, where the people that are in power, just as I was saying, will say, okay, this is something this person is threatening our country. Things could go bad, so we need to do something. Or another country is threatening us. Say North Korea is planning a strike against the United States. Okay, so the people in power, in this case, not Obama, but Trump, would say, okay, we have to do something about that. Okay, maybe we need to send troops over there. Even more there's people that are there already, but we need to send more people. Okay. Okay, so he'll go to Congress and say, this is what we need to do. Congress will say, okay, and they'll order the troops to go. Okay, so you have your authority, which is the administration, the current administration, and then they just use violence to either stop or limit violence in our country. We're striking back. We're striking first. Okay. Traditional authority. This would be, in our case, it would be on the local level, the police, courts. Okay. National, it would be the government, which consists of the president, Congress, the Senate, okay, Supreme Court. Rational legal authority. This is what I don't like about this. Okay. Rational legal authority. Let's skip that. Charismatic authority. This would be a person who is, I think you could put some politicians in that category. People who were charismatic. When President Kennedy was running for office and then he won the office, he was a charismatic type of person. Okay. Who would be another? Anybody have any examples of a charismatic authority? They don't necessarily have to be in politics. Anybody? No? Okay. But that's one. Authority as an ideal type. Okay. So you would have a person, I don't want to give any, try to think of someone in this country who would be an ideal type of person. And I can't think of anybody. So I'll skip that for now. And then transfer of authority. We know that in this country, politically, every so many years, the one administration transfers their authority over to the next administration. Okay, that would be a good example. You have the elections, people choose who they want to be in power, and so that transfer of authority is seamless. And only it happens in this country, happens in some countries and globally, but in a lot of countries it's not as seamless, it's not as smooth, because some people are not happy with what the results are of the election. So they try to say, okay, we're not going to let this person come in to power, we're going to assassinate this person whatever it is. So the transfer of authority from one even one political party to another should be seamless, but it's not always the case. Okay. Okay. Under authority and legitimate violence, you have the collapse of authority. Okay. So you have, say you have a country, the people have elections, they're not happy, again, with whoever is in power, and the people don't listen. Okay. They're not listening to what that person in authority is saying. They want that person out. So that person doesn't have any way of keeping the peace, per se. Okay? So you have a collapse of authority where people are not listening to the person that's in charge, and things just gotta go haywire. Okay? Then you have the monopoly of violence, and an example of that would be over in Syria, where they're having the person in charge is saying that you have to do things my way. Okay, I have the military behind me, I have other nations behind me, and you must do what I say. And so he has a monopoly. Even though there are people that are fighting against him, there are not enough people to overthrow him, get him out of office. And so he has the monopoly on whatever violence goes there. He's gassing people, airstrikes against the people. You know, all those things are happening. And then you have a revolution, and this is where people have decided, a group of people have decided that things are not going the way we think they should go. We're starving, we're having all these issues, we can't find work, and so we're going to overthrow whatever authority is in power at the time. Okay? So that's when you have revolution. All righty. So traditional authority, this is another example. The widows in Italy were expected to dress in black when their husbands died. Okay? So the widows did conform to this expression of lifetime sorrow. You're supposed to always wear black the rest of your life. Okay. I was looking at a video on YouTube. I look at YouTube a lot, and they were talking about Queen Victoria, okay, in England, and when her husband died, Prince Albert died, she wore black. She used to wear white a lot. This is how we get this is where the idea of the white wedding dress, because she was one of the first to wear white at her wedding, and that's how that whole tradition started. But when he died, she wore black for the rest of her life. She didn't remarry or anything like that. She just wore it, even though it wasn't the tradition. No authority had said, in that case herself, had said that everybody must do that. She just chose to do that. So these widows, they did do it for a while. But then when everything changed and the industrialization came into being, where people again are not working on farms, as I told you earlier, they're working in the cities and the urban areas. Okay, widows said, well, why should I do that? Why should I continue to do that? So they stopped. Fewer widows followed that practice of wearing black, for the rest of their lives. Because a lot of people want to get married again, over time, and so they don't want to be stigmatized by wearing black the rest of their lives. They want to go back to wearing their regular clothes so that they can be back in the marriage market again. So that's basically why they did it. Stop doing it. And then a lot of people a lot of women were coming into the workforce, even in these Mediterranean countries. Women were being in the workforce, okay? So they didn't want to wear, black the rest of the time. People were freer, women were freer once they started earning their own money. Okay. So rational and legal authority. So we have reasonable laws, okay? These are laws that are written and agreed upon, okay? So what would be an example of a reasonable law? Can anybody think of one? Anybody? A lot of them.
Like drinking age or voting age.
Mm-hmm. Yep, those are good. Those are good laws. So drinking, I don't know, maybe I've told you in passing or told the other class in passing, but when I was 18, you could go to the bar. The Michigan laws had changed, so people that were 18 and older who could vote, you can go to the bar, you can buy alcohol, all those things. But it didn't work out so well as the state thought it was. So then they just raised the limit back to 21. So now you have to be 21 to do those. Well, not to vote, but to be able to drink, or, go out and buy alcohol. They just changed it. But I thought it was reasonable, but evidently the stats probably said that things were happening that shouldn't be, letting teenagers drink, or go out party and stuff where there's alcohol and things, so they just changed the law back. Okay. And I think the smoking too, you have to be 21 too? Anybody go pay attention to when you go into the store and they say if you're this date, born before this date, you can purchase. So I think it's 21 also. You can't buy cigarettes or things like that. Again, when I was 18, you could do that. You could buy cigarettes. You could do all those things. Okay. But again, they changed. So this was a law that was written and agreed upon, and the bureaucracy, to get that word out, was enforcing it. Okay. There's a law that really is a common sense thing but they had to make it a law to enforce it so that people would do it. And that is, say that you are driving down the street and a ambulance comes by or the fire engine comes striding down the street, and you don't stop. A lot of people don't stop. People used to just pull over to the side when they heard the siren or whatever. But people don't do that nowadays. They just keep going, So what the state of Michigan did, and it went into effect, I think it goes into effect this month, which they have a law that's a bit stronger that says that you must do this. You must pull over when there's an ambulance or a fire truck that's coming down the street or coming in your direction. You should pull over. Okay, and if you don't, there's a penalty for that, and I can't remember what the penalty is, whether it's jail time, whether it's a ticket or whatever. But anyway, but it's just common sense that you would do that, because there's a chance that the fire truck or the ambulance could hit you as you're driving. You keep driving, but people used to just pull over, but a lot of people don't do it nowadays. They just keep driving, So again, the law had to be stiffened so that there's a big sanction for not doing that. Okay. So when we talk about charismatic authority, again, it could be people in politics or not. But the example that the book talks about is Joan of Arc. She was a teenager, okay, and she ended up changing the history of France. Okay, so it shows her liberating Orleans from the British in 1429. So the British Empire was huge many, many centuries ago. Okay, but as people started thinking, we don't really want to be ruled by England, and they started breaking away. Okay. So this is one person, Joan of Arc, who was part of that time, and she ended up being burned at the stake for it. Okay. So this is an example of a person that people want to follow. They believe in the message, okay, that the person is saying, and they will follow that person. It's just something about them, that I, want to be with this person, want to wherever they want to lead, I want to follow. Okay. So authority is an ideal type. Okay. So again, these authorities can be of any morality. Another example of a person who's an authority is Jim Jones. Anybody remember Jim Jones? I know I'm getting into stuff from way, way back in the day. But anyway, he was a preacher, and he started what essentially was a cult. And he had the people go overseas. Eventually, they went overseas, started a whole community. And then when the authorities, when relatives, one of the things that you had to do when you joined was you had to kind of give up all your worldly possessions, really give them to the church, his church. And you had to cut contact with your family members, okay? So people back in the United States, once they moved overseas, family members in the United States started talking to the government about it, government authorities about this. They were concerned about their relatives, okay? And so there was a contingent sent over. There was a group of senators that went over to investigate. And while they were there, Jim Jones decided that everybody was going to drink poison and kill themselves. When you hear people say drink the Kool-Aid, that's where that originated from. He had like a Kool-Aid mix, and people had to drink it, but it was poison, and a lot of people died. They did exactly what he said, and he was a charismatic type person. And they drank the Kool-Aid, and they died as a result, okay? So again, these authorities can be of any type of, they can be immoral, they can be moral, okay? Okay. So Joan of Arc, they showed Joan of Arc. Adolf Hitler, he had people that were following him, believed in him. I watched a film on Netflix called The Crown. It's a series, and it's about England. It's about Elizabeth II, Queen Elizabeth, the current queen. It's all about how she came into power and all of that. But her husband, Prince Philip, his family was they were off deep into Nazi Germany, because his sisters, he had 4 sisters, and they all married German princes, and they were in part of the Nazi party. Okay, so they were showing. I saw one episode where one sister had died in a plane crash with her husband, his whole family, and then they had the funeral, and it was just Nazi Germany all the way. When you walked through the street, people were just saluting and stuff like that as the casket went by. Okay, so again, people followed him. Okay, even though he was just insane with his thoughts. Okay, and things that he was trying to say. But people believed in him. So this is another example of a person who is an authority as an ideal type of authority. Okay, and again, they don't have to be good. They can be good or bad. Okay. So the transfer of authority, again, I just talked about this orderly transfer of authority from one leader to another. Depending on the country, depending on the part of the world, that could be smooth or not. Okay. If enough people decide, I don't like this, then we're going to do something about it, then it's not going to be smooth. We've been blessed that people, I think I can only go back just so far, but in terms of the transfer of power going from one administration to another, I think the most contentious one was this last election cycle when Hillary Clinton was running and she lost to Donald Trump. people were upset. People are still upset about that. Still upset. But they didn't really do anything about it, but just talk about it, how upset they were and whatever. And then people that are in power like Congress or Senate, they may try to block things that he's doing because they didn't agree that he should be there in the first place. But that's all basically that's happening. Nobody's trying to overthrow him or trying to assassinate him or any kind of way. So again, we've been blessed in this country where things are orderly. This person won, okay, they can be in power until we vote them out or keep them in, however we decide to do, okay? So, and it talks about the transfer of one type of authority to another type of authority, okay? So I would say it's hard to say if Trump is worse than Obama, because when you start looking at the record, he did a lot of stuff. Obama, I'm saying, he did a lot of things that weren't kosher, that people who just, you know, in the interest of the United States, okay? So I can't say that they are different types of authority. They're probably the same type. It's just one is able to hide it better than the other, okay, in my opinion. We basically know about Donald Trump based on him being in the public eye and being in business, how he operates. But Obama, not really, you know, he has this facade of, you know, being good and whatever, but there are a lot of things that he did, again, during his time in office I just really don't agree with, okay? That would be something that Trump would do, that you would expect him to do, okay? All right. All right, so types of governments. You have monarchies. This is the rise of the state. You have democracies, citizenship as a revolutionary idea, and dictatorships and oligarchies. I think I got that right. This is where people seize power. They just like, hey, I'm in charge now, and you can't do anything about it. Okay. So the monarchies, this is where people are, based on birth, are put into positions of power. Some have lesser power than others, depending on the country, depending on the parts of the world. In Britain, the Queen doesn't have really any power as they used to have, maybe a few centuries ago. Okay, now they're more dependent on Parliament or on the government to make the decisions, and the Queen can say, you know, I agree. They'll ask her opinion. She can give her opinion, but she can't make any laws. She can't say you must do, as her ancestors could say that. Okay, so the crown has been kind of diluted over time, where they just don't really have any power. You know, they're basically dependent on public opinion. If the people like us, we stay in power, or we stay on the throne. If they don't like us, people start talking about, do we really need a queen? We're spending all our tax dollars on the royal family. Do we really need that? But then the crown will do something that people like, and then people don't talk about that anymore. But it always comes up that something will happen. The Queen will do something, or the Prince Philip will do like he did a couple of weeks ago, where he was driving and he shouldn't be driving. He was driving and he hit a woman. It was two people in the car with a baby, and he hit them, and they were injured, not seriously, but they were injured. And he was saying he's not giving up his license because that's how he is. And people were saying, well, we're paying all this money. Should we really have royalty? That's when people start talking about that. When they do something, should they really be around? Should we really be spending our tax dollars supporting them? And then they'll do something good. Okay, so Prince Philip decided. Well, he didn't decide, but he gave up his license, his driver's license, so he no longer drives. Okay, and so people are happy again. And they stop talking about that. So that's how that works in those types of situations. Other countries, the monarchs have more power, and they can dictate what happens. Like in Japan, okay, people can dictate. The people in power can dictate what happens there, and the people have to follow. But in Britain, it's not that way anymore. Okay, democracies. This is where the citizens decide that we're going to have a say in our leaders, how we pick our leaders. Okay, we're going to have a say through our representatives, what laws tend to come into being, what laws need to go away. Okay, and it works for the most part like that, you know. Okay, citizens do have a stake in it, in the country running, how it's run, but again, over time, more and more corporations have the power because they have the access to government through giving money, campaign money. They have lots of access to people in power. Okay, but it started as a revolutionary idea that we're coming from Europe, coming from England in particular, and we want to start our own system where the citizens have the power. And that's how it started. But again, over time it's changed. Citizens still have some, but not as much as they need to, particularly people who don't have the money. If you don't have money, you really don't have any power to change things. Okay? Then dictatorships and oligarchies. Okay, and this is where people seize power. You know, they can do that through assassination of the current dictator. Okay. Or they can do it in other means. They can rig elections so that the person who wants to win does win. Okay, so it's various, but basically they take over the particular country that they're interested in. Okay. City-states, and this is a king and queen, okay. Again, earlier in Europe's history, they were able to gain regions or plots of land and regions through war. They went to war. Whoever won got the power, okay. And were able to rule. That's basically what that means. Okay, democracies. Okay, and it's a global social movement. If you notice that everywhere that we go in the world, the United States goes in the world, we're always trying to bring democracy to people. But democracy does not work everywhere. Okay, particularly when you're used to a certain type of government. Okay, and we're like, that's fine, we don't really want democracy. A lot of places don't want democracy. Most of them take it because attached to our bringing democracy to them is money. You want the money, you got to have the democracy also. Okay, you got to take that form of government also. Okay, and for the most part, the United States will determine who is going to be in charge. Is someone in charge who is able to keep our style of government in power. Okay, those are the people that are chosen. Okay. So they show here tribesmen voting in the Philippines. Okay, a lot of people like portions. They like portions of democracy. They like the freedom that it brings. Okay, but it doesn't work everywhere. That's the thing that nobody ever talks about. It does not work everywhere. Okay, so dictatorships and oligarchies. You have the individual, person who decides, I want to be in power, and I'm going to do it by any means necessary. Okay. You have small group power. This might be the military. Say that you have a military, the current dictator, they're unhappy with, and so they plan a coup, meaning they are going to overthrow that person and put the person in power that they want to. Okay. But again, it varies in control. It'll vary. Okay. Some individuals have more power than small groups. Okay. And sometimes a small group will have more power than the individual who's trying to overthrow. In the U.S., hold on. I want to do something here because I want it to break. I wanted to kind of go through this. How many? Oh, there are a lot of many-minis. Okay. Current slide. Okay. I'm probably going to break in just a minute. So this is U.S. political system. We have our political parties. We have Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. And then there's some other ones like the Green Party, things like that very few people attach themselves with. I used to be part of the Democratic Party, okay? But over time I found that particular party is not really doing a whole lot for me as an individual and for African American people as a group. They make a lot of promises at the time of elections, during the election cycle, but then when they get in power, you vote for them, you don't get anything. They forget all about you. Okay, this is what I found over time. So I registered myself as an independent. And really for the last 2, 3, since Clinton, I haven't voted for a president at all. I only vote on the issues. When I go to the ballot box, whatever the issues are, that's what I vote on. But as terms, because I never was happy with anybody. I never found that anybody was going to really be able to do what they say they were going to do. Make a lot of promises and then they don't come through. So since Clinton, and I really shouldn't have voted for him, I haven't voted for a president since then. Okay, so now we're in the new election cycle, 2020, and so there's a whole, and you probably will hear about it because it's starting to be more prominent in the news about reparations, and I talked about this in other classes that we had for African Americans as a way to address what happened to us when we were brought here as slaves. Okay. Other groups get reparations. Jewish people get reparations today for the Holocaust. As a matter of fact, in France, what happened, they sued not only the countries that were involved in the Holocaust, but they also sued companies that were involved. And they've gotten millions of dollars since then. And most recently, France gave each person who's living plus their descendants $420,000 apiece. Okay, so they're continuing to get money from that. So being an African American who is a descendant of slaves, in this election cycle, we're trying to push for reparations for African Americans. So you'll probably hear about it in the news. Okay, so whoever is interested in doing that will get my vote. Whoever is not interested in doing that will not get my vote. Okay, so I probably will choose a president this time. I just don't know who it's going to be. Some candidates are saying that they're for reparations. Some are saying it's not possible. You must wait, or you must attach yourself to the Native Americans who are getting reparations, or attach yourself to the clean, because they have the new Green Deal, which talks about the environment. You must attach yourself to that, and it doesn't seem fair to do that. That's just my opinion. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. I've done my sermon for the day on that. All right, so again, you have your political parties, you have elections. For the most part, they are fair. We'll talk about the contrast within the democratic system in Europe, voting patterns, lobbyists, and special interest groups. Okay, and we'll do that at 10:20. 10, March 15th is exam number 2, right? It's on chapters 8, 10, and 15, since we're doing chapter 15 today. But I have a lecture built into that week, which I did that beginning. So what I'm going to do is for March 15th, when you have exam 2, what I want you to do is the same thing you did for the first exam. If you want to come here and take the exam, you can. There won't be any formal lecture. I'm going to go over to teaching and learning. Now, this time I've got to do it or I'm going to be way behind. I'm going to go to teaching and learning. I'm going to record the lecture on Canvas. So when you're looking at the slides, you'll hear my voice, okay, and whatever I have to say. So that lecture will be online, okay, on the 15th of March. So you'll go and you'll take the exam wherever you choose to be. Take the exam over those 3 days, and then it'll be done. But the lecture is still going to be, it's still in the syllabus, but you'll just go online to hear it, okay? Then you won't have to come here if you don't want to, all right? And I apologize for that. I think why I'm doing this is because I'm used to classes meeting twice a week instead of once a week. And that's why things get done the way that they're done. But, again, it'll be online. You'll be able to hear my voice while you look at the slides, okay, for the 15th of March. And then you'll just take your exam.
8, 10, 15.
8, March 15th.
No, the chapters.
The chapter is going to be chapter 19. So the chapter will be chapter 19 on the 15th of March. Again, you just look at it at your leisure. Okay, on medicine and health. Wow.
Oh, you said, okay. Any other chapters besides 19?
The exam is only going to concern itself with chapter 8, 10, and 15. 8, 10, and 15. And 15. All right, so it says which political party dominates, and we have the thing of red states, blue states. Blue state is Democratic, and the majority of people vote democratically, and the red is Republican. And you see there are a lot more red states than there are blue states. Okay, so how do people like Obama or another Democratic candidate win an election if the majority of states are red? How do you think?
Because there are swing states. Some states aren't they called swing states?
Right.
Sometimes they vote Republican, sometimes they vote Democrat.
That's correct. That's correct. You got to get the people in those states on board for that particular candidate. Okay, and a lot of people voted for in 2008. A lot of people voted for Obama, who were from red states. They just believed in his message. Okay, they thought it was universal. It was going to benefit them. Okay, and so they ended up voting for him. A lot of people who were Democrats voted for Obama. A lot of wealthy people who were Democrats voted for Obama, and they were really disappointed in him. After a few months, just a few months into the first term, they were really disappointed. They thought he was going to do more than what he did. Okay. All right. So you have that. Okay. A lot of people didn't think that Donald Trump would win. You know, they were surprised. And then you listen to during that election cycle, listen to all the pundits and everyday people, they were just like, there's no way he's gonna win. No way. You know, how? How can that happen? Okay, but everybody got it wrong. But if you go back and look at, there is a video on Netflix about Donald Trump going all the way back to the 80s, and when he was thinking about how I want to run for president, how am I going to do that? So he's been thinking about this for a long time, and the strategies that he used to win. Okay, he even took some of the wrestler Jesse Ventura. Everybody know him?
Yeah.
He ran for governor of Minnesota and won. And so the Trump candidate went, or not candidate, but the Trump political system went to Minnesota and talked to Jesse Ventura about what did you do? How did you do this? And he gave him his playbook, and that's what he used, and that's how he ended up winning. Okay, so it's a really fascinating video if you ever get a chance to watch it. It's on Netflix. Okay. But again, a lot of people they're like, no way. People were making jokes out of it and everything. You know, how could he do it? But he did it. Okay. So it says here, although the Democrats and the Republicans represent slightly different slices of the center, those differences arouse extreme loyalties and emotions and pandered to by both parties. So people know, the candidates know how to play on your emotions, okay? They know that you're loyal to a particular party. Again, basically, to be honest, I followed was interested in the Democratic Party only because it's a tradition in my family. And it wasn't until I became an adult and started thinking for myself that I said, you know, these people aren't really doing what they say they're going to do, okay? And that's when I changed. But people have extreme loyalty to either party, you know, no matter who the candidate is. All right, so some differences between U.S. and Europe. Elections in most of Europe are not winner-take-all. Okay, doesn't always happen that way. You know, it could be someone who's behind and they end up being the winner. Okay. European countries base their elections on a system of proportional representation. Okay. It encourages minority parties. That's why you have these different parties within the European system. Okay. But the winner-take-all system discourages them. Okay. So Europe encourages the formation of non-centrist parties. So the Green Party, the parties that you see on the ballot here that may not even have a chance, they would have a chance in Europe. Okay. So the Green Party, Independent, you know, party, those candidates would have more of a chance of winning the elections than they would here. The United States has centrist parties, so those Democrats, Republicans, that's where your candidates and your winners are going to come from. Either of those two parties. Okay, here's some voting patterns. Who votes for president from 1988 to 2016. Their age groups, the percentages of Americans who vote. We don't vote enough. We don't get out there and go and vote, you know. And then some, like me, don't vote for the candidates themselves. I'll vote on the issues, whatever the issues are. Okay. And so they don't have that, and they don't have what I do in those stats. Okay. And so it's lower. You'll find people who are 65, who are 35 to 65 and older, they tend to vote, have higher percentages of getting out there and voting than younger people. And I think that's because younger people are not, well, there are more younger people that are part of the political system than there were even 5 years ago, because more things are happening to younger people and they feel like they have a stake, more of a stake in the outcome of elections. And so they're starting to be more active, but not in the numbers that they need to be. Okay, so by sex, male, female. Female tend to vote more for who's president than male, and then by race and ethnicity. Whites are more likely than other ethnicities. Okay. And again, it's the same thing with young people and the age difference. Whites feel like they have more of a stake in what's happening. They're more informed. They take the time to become informed. That's why a lot of people are kind of shocked when they're hearing about what I was talking to you about reparations. They're kind of shocked that black people are saying, well, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm not going to vote for you. We never said that before. We like you. If you come to our town and you say all these good things about what, us and what you're going to do, and we just instantly like you and we'll vote for you. And then if you don't do anything for us, we don't say anything. But now people, about this particular issue, people are talking about it and they're saying either you do this or this happens to you. So now people are shocked, like, where'd they come from? So you'll probably see in the next set of stats in this election cycle, you'll probably see more people, African Americans voting. Okay. In terms of education, college graduates have the highest percentage. Again, not to take anything away from people who haven't gone to college, but they tend to be more informed about what the candidates are about. They tend to take the time to call or write to their representative. Like for myself, Congresswoman Talia, I can't pronounce her last name, Talia, I don't know, you guys probably know who I'm talking about, but she's a Muslim, one of the first Muslim congresspersons, and she's from Michigan, and she's in my district, so she's my congressperson. So I'm going to write to her. I'm going to try to call first, and then if I don't get through on the call, I'm going to write to her and ask her, is she going to add her name in support of this bill, which talks about reparations, so that they can study it first before it goes on to the Senate as a bill. Is your name going to be put on there or not? Okay, so that's what, again, people who go to college graduates, they tend to be more active, All right. And then talks about marital status. They don't have any stats from the 80s or 90s, but they are keeping stats in the late 90s and into the 2000s. Okay, and they find that people who are married vote for president more than people who are divorced. And then in the labor force, people who are employed vote more for president than people who are unemployed. Okay. All right, and then income. Okay, higher income, the more active you are, the more you're likely to vote for a president. Again, because you got a stake in who is elected. Okay, so this is a photo from the 1900s on Ellis Island. Everybody knows Ellis Island was a point where people entered the country. If you were coming from a foreign country, you had to go through Ellis Island, and they had all sorts of people there to talk to you about being here, asking you questions, a doctor to examine you to make sure that you didn't have any particular diseases. If you did, they would send you back where you came from. Okay. But they collected a whole lot of information about the people who were coming into the country. Okay. And sometimes if you were ill, they would keep you, and that they had a whole hospital there, and they would keep you in the hospital until you became well, and then you could enter the country. Okay. All right, so voting patterns here, two-party presidential vote. You see women, Democrats and Republicans, men, women, and African Americans. Okay. You see for African Americans, the Democrat, the percentages are very high. Again, because we just accept anybody. We like you, we like you. You know, we'll vote for you. You know, but that is changing. Okay. Two-party presidential vote was split. Or is split, and it talks about whites, Latinos, Asian Americans. It's interesting for Latinos and Asian Americans, they don't have any stats for 88 through 96, but then they're starting to keep, from the 2000s on, they're starting to keep stats on them. Why do you think that is? Anybody? Anybody know why that's happening? Well, I could say because by 2050, Latinos will be the majority. They will no longer be the minority. They'll be the majority of people. So it's in the interest of the statisticians to keep these stats on how they vote. And people who are running for office or planning to run for office, it's important to have that information, because then you can target the people. You can target Latinos in terms of what I could do for you, because they're going to be asking, "What can you do for me?" And if you're not talking the right language or saying the right thing, they're not going to vote for you. Okay. Again, that's something that other ethnic groups have learned a long time ago. Only are behind the curve, and that has to change. Okay. All right, so lobbyists and special interest groups. Okay. You have special interest groups, mainly corporations, who want to make sure that they keep what they have, whether it be being able to take money out of the country and park it somewhere else so they pay less taxes, or whether they want a particular drug to be on the market. There was an interesting 60 Minutes on last Sunday. It was talking about the opioid epidemic. And because one drug, Oxycontin, I think that's how you pronounce it, Oxycontin, was changed from limited use. It used to be limited use. You can only use it for a short period of time. Then it started talking about, they changed the label, and it said you can use it every day for any kind of pain. And when they made that little change in the label, the market just exploded. Now they make billions of dollars from that particular drug, okay? But it's not meant to be used every day over a long period of time. It's only supposed to be used, like if you have surgery. I don't know if it was this class or the other class. I was saying I had knee surgery back in 2017, and they gave me Oxycontin in the hospital, but I wouldn't take it. When they asked me, did I want to bring it home, I told them, no, I don't want it. And he ordered it anyway, and I left it at the pharmacy. I never went to get it. But it's an addictive medicine. You become addicted to it. And because the body can tolerate it quickly, you have to take more and more of it. That's why you see people taking more and more of it over time to get the same effect that they had the very first time. Okay? And that's why people are dying from it. Okay, they overdose because they have to have more of the body. Body builds up a tolerance. You got to have more pills, more times of the day, and people end up overdosing. So that one change in that label from limited use to everyday use, that's when the market exploded. Now they make billions of dollars off of that drug. Okay, so they have people in Washington, the companies hire lawyers, and they go in and they make sure that they get what they need in terms of the regulations, okay, so that they can continue to do what they do. All right. There's a lot of money attached to that. The lobbyists make promises on behalf of the corporations. We're going to give this X amount of dollars to your campaign fund, or we'll send you on trips, or we'll give you this, or we'll do that. So there's a lot of corruption in there also, okay? But these are the people that have access to the politicians, the most direct access, because they have the money. So there's a lot of the lobbying going on, again, because everybody wants something. And Washington is all about a big pot of money. It's just a pot of money. If you think of it, it's a big pot of money. Who's going to get some of it? How many of us are going to get some of it? Okay. All right. So the functionalist perspective conflict, and which view is right. Okay. The functionalist perspective talks about the basic needs of the group. That's us. Okay. We're the group in this country. Okay. So pluralism uses checks and balances, that's what the government is supposed to do, to prevent any one person from gaining control over the government. So the president can't, even though Donald Trump, Barack Obama would say, those are the most recent two that I'm using with the beaten stick, even though they try to say, well, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, I'm going to build the wall, I'm going to do this, or whatever it is that I want to do, but they have to go through others, Congress, Senate, to get that done. They can't just do, there's some things that they can do, and they don't need that oversight. Very few things. But for the most part, they have to go through other groups, the two groups that I mentioned, to be able to get things done. Or to get, they can't just take control of the government and just do things our way. And I think that was a frustration for Obama, because he had a lot of opposition, okay? And it's a frustration for Trump now, because he's used to, in business, it's my way. I'm used to doing things my way. When I say I want something done, it gets done. He's not used to having to ask other people, can I do this? Or can I do that? Okay? But that's the way the system is set up, so that not one person gets to overtake the government and just do things the way that they want to. In this country, that's how it is. All right, so C. Wright Mills, and I think I talked a little bit about him. He's from the first chapter. He came up with the sociological imagination, but he also wrote a book called The Power Elite. And he said that the top leaders, the corporations, the political party, and the military really have the most power, okay? There's a middle, Congress, other legislatures, special interest groups, and local opinion leaders. They're in the middle, and then the people, the masses of people, they're unorganized, exploited, and mostly uninterested. A lot of people aren't really interested in politics until something happens to them, and then they start caring. So you can believe that the people in Flint, Michigan, weren't concerned about politics until they had contaminated water. Now they're very interested in the political system. Who gets in power? How are they going to serve us? How are they going to fix what happened to us? Okay. But in the past, they weren't all really that interested. They didn't need to be, because everything was running like it should have been running. Okay. All right. So the people at the top have the most power. The people at the bottom have the least power. But over time, and I can say over time, since C. Wright Mills wrote that book, more and more it's the corporations have the most power. Okay? They can determine who gets in office politically. They can, and again, in some countries, the corporations can build a military to serve their interests. Say we want to get rid of a certain group of people. We could start a war, use our funds to start a war. We can go skip over the political because we have the political people in our pocket anyway, so we can just do what we need to do. So more and more it's the corporation who's at the very top. And the other people are just the other parts of a stool, because C. Wright Mills said, think of the corporation, the political, and the military as a three-legged stool, okay? So again, the corporations can use the other two legs to serve their interests, because they got enough money to do that, okay? All right, so which view is right? It says, a lot of evidence shows that the wealthy and business groups, just as I was saying, being a major influence on U.S. policy, okay? And this makes you kind of uneasy, because whatever they are saying, whatever they are contributing to make things happen, they can change U.S. policy, okay? By just giving money to the right candidates. You know. So it's, for them to have that kind of power is not the way it should be in this country. Really anywhere, but particularly in this country. We're not used to that. We're used to having people, the masses, in some way influencing what happens. Okay? This is why when Franklin Roosevelt came into power as president, the wealthy really hated his guts, because he was from the same class of people who put him in power, okay? But he was helping people who didn't have power, okay? If you remember, during the time he came in office in 1930s, the Depression was going on. He created all these new programs called the New Deal, all these programs that put people to work. People who weren't able to work, they weren't able to eat. They didn't have the social service programs they have today for people to go in and get help when they didn't have a job. He created jobs. It was something as simple as cleaning the roads or painting a building or whatever it is, but you got money for it, okay? And again, he was doing things that went against what the people who are wealthy would want to do. They didn't really care about whether people were eating or anything like that, or had a place to stay. But he did care about that, okay? So again, we've turned from that New Deal to where things are today, where people are trying to roll back things. One of the more important pieces of legislation that Franklin Roosevelt put in place was the Social Security, okay? This is why people get Social Security benefits today, because of him, okay? People have been trying to get rid of it, but he put it in place so people could not get rid of it. No one can come into office and try to destroy it. Now, other things that happened during that time, like people being able to get food stamp benefits, that basically happened during the Johnson administration. People have been trying to destroy that, but it's attached to the Farm Bill. So whatever happens with the Farm Bill, that the people who get SNAP benefits still will benefit from that. They can't get rid of it. But what politicians have been trying to do, they've been trying to separate the SNAP program from the Farm Bill so that they can destroy it. But it hasn't happened, but people keep working at it. But to give you an example of what would happen if that did happen, my granddaughter went to the market during the time. It was, what happened was the people, because of the shutdown, the government decided to give people who receive SNAP benefits their benefits for January and February in February, so that when February came, you would not, they gave them in January, so when February came, you would get no benefits. You wouldn't get any benefits until March, okay? So if everybody went shopping, did their shopping all in January with their benefits. So when February came, stores had to close because my granddaughter went. She pays cash for her groceries. She went to the store. They were closed, but the manager was there, and she said, "Well, why is the store closed? Is there something wrong?" And she said, "Because of the government shutdown, we cannot afford to stay open because we're dependent on the SNAP people who receive SNAP benefits." And there are lots of communities all around the country when they closed down because people weren't there. And my granddaughter was, "I pay cash." And I told her, I said, "But there are not enough of you in the community that are paying cash to keep the store open." So if the government were ever to get rid of the SNAP benefits, it would hurt a lot. A lot of stores would close. Maybe not the big chains like Kroger, Myers, Walmart, they wouldn't close. But some of the other neighborhood stores, grocery stores, they would shut down because they're dependent on people who use those benefits, okay? So again, when you have wealthy people who are in charge, they got everything going for them and stuff like that, they're having an influence on U.S. policy. It's going to hurt the people who don't have that wealth, okay? And that's an example of one of the things with the SNAP benefits. Okay, war and terrorism. You know how about I do this? How about I stop here, pick it up next week, okay? Because we still have time, and then put the film on. How about I do that? Everybody in agreement? Agreement? Okay. We're going to stop here with war and terrorism because I can get that article for you and bring it next week. Okay. Because again, the film is like 1 hour and 37 minutes.
Good luck with today's lesson.